Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Somerville Job Creation and Retention Trust meeting of May 3rd, 2023. My name is Annika Van Eaton. I am the Managing Trustee of the Job Creation and Retention Trust, and I call this meeting to order at 6:23 p.m. On March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law a supplemental budget bill which extends the temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. This extension allows public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the public body physically present at a meeting location, and to provide adequate alternative access to remote meetings. This session will be recorded and will be a public record. I will now ask the board members to confirm they are in attendance in alphabetical order. Thomas Bent, absent. Vicky Coates.
Here.
Silvana Dinka.
Here.
Matt McLaughlin. Absent. Colleen Moran.
Here.
Rachel Ned Carney. Absent. Annika Van Eaton. Here. Rand Wilson.
Here.
We have a quorum. I will now ask city staff to present a few house rules about using the technology. William.
Thank you, Annika. Hello, everyone. My name is William Blackmer. I'm the Workforce Development Coordinator and serve as staff to the Job Creation and Retention Trust. When an agenda item is being presented, presentation materials received ahead of time will be displayed on the screen. When the chair asks for public comment, use the raise hand function if you would like to speak, and you will be unmuted one by one and given 2 minutes to speak. Trust members, all votes must be roll call votes with a motion and a second. The chair will call on each board member for a yes/no vote in alphabetical order. Questions or comments that you type into the questions or chat boxes in the control panel area of your screen will be part of the public record in accordance with open meeting law. So with that, I'll pass it back to Annika for the first item.
Thanks, William. So today our first item is review and approval of the January 19th meeting minutes. Wow, January 19th. That feels like an eternity.
I was thinking the same thing.
I think it's March 1st meeting
March
minutes.
1st.
Yes, it should be March
Okay.
1st. Sorry about
Got
that.
it. All right. The review and approval of the March 1st meeting minutes. Attached in the meeting materials was a draft of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on March 1st. Are there any edits or revisions to be made before approval? Oh, thanks, William. Yeah, I'll give everyone a chance to look through the minutes and let me know if you see anything that you would like to change or amend. Okay. And once folks have had a chance to look at it, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I thought they looked great. I move to approve the March 1st meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Awesome. All right, motion to approve the March 1st meeting minutes. Thomas Bent, absent. Let's see here. Vicky.
Vote to approve.
All righty. Silvana.
Yes.
Okie doke. Matt, absent. Colleen.
Approve.
Doke. Rachel, absent. Annika, yes, vote to approve. And Rand.
Yes.
Okay, any opposed? No. Any abstentions? No. Okay, measure passes. And I am trying to find, oh, there we go. Okay. Lost everybody for a minute. You're swimming around. Okie dokie. Meeting minutes are approved. So now I'm going to turn it back to William to look at our received and estimated linkage fees for 2023.
Thank you. So on the screen, I am displaying the same PDF that was sent. And the number that I want to indicate here is that the trust currently has over $716,000 in uncommitted funds. We are still expecting a few checks to arrive in the coming months. We actually have one that the $410,000 has been received but has not yet been processed. So that's practically in our bank. So yeah, we still have over 1 million expected in the next few months, and closer to 2 million hopefully expected by the end of the calendar year.
Cool. Thanks, William. Does anyone have any questions?
Looks great.
Okay. Yeah. Very exciting. All right. So, oh, did I hear a question? No. All right. Agenda item number 3 is to review the current status of the 22-23 investment priorities. And we'll keep it on you for that.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to our March meeting, following that sorry, I skipped ahead. Yeah, we're continuing to address the investment priorities voted on by the trust this past fall. Votes were proposed on tonight's agenda in relation to priorities 2 and priority 4. We will also be discussing updates on priority 6, which is mental health resilience and trauma training for adult education and workforce development organizations, where funding has not yet been obligated, but where we have a subcommittee working on this priority. So I'm happy to take any questions about the priority list. And then after that, we can seg the conversation into the work of the subcommittees.
William, just looking ahead to priority number 7 around the wage theft and worker rights training, when does the second grant to the worker center end?
So their second grant actually wrapped up in the fall. I've been in touch with them a couple of times, as I think you're all aware. Francisca moved on from her position at the Welcome Project to work at MassCosh. They had another employee that started taking over her role, but has since left the organization as well. So my understanding is that the managing position at the Somerville Workers Center is vacant still. So yeah, I had met with them, I want to say in March maybe, and said, you know, this is where the priority had landed on the list of priorities for the year. Given that, you know, I would recommend putting together some sort of proposal on what you're looking to do for the coming year. This is what Francisca had proposed in the past, and I haven't received anything back. So I'm wondering where the capacity might lie for them running that kind of programming in the near future. all that being said, you know, if this was voted in the coming months to have an RFP issued that addressed this priority, it would be open for public bid. So,
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Thanks, William. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's turn to updates from the subcommittees. First, from the Good Municipal Jobs Training Subcommittee, which was voted on as priority number 4. William, I think you're going to take the lead on that, and then if any subcommittee members want to jump in, feel free.
yes, I just, so I'm sharing the memo that addresses pretty much the points that I want to share on this priority. So we had the trust look over the scope of work, the proposed scope of work at the last meeting. Following that, I didn't receive any additional feedback from trust members by email. So I then was finally able to secure a meeting with City of Somerville Human Resources. And I'm glad to report that they were definitely on board with the plan, understood the importance of programming, not just for the technical needs of the positions that scope was targeting, but also for the general job readiness skills, career navigation, and wraparound services. They said those were a lot of the barriers of individuals that were expressing interest in those positions. So they also expressed willingness to connect with any organizations that are selected and would share information about vacancies, about their application process, et cetera, to kind of help inform those training providers in preparing individuals for those jobs. So I did have an obligation vote on the agenda tonight in relation to that. But I think we will have to postpone that to the next meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions from the trust.
Thanks,
No
William.
question. Yeah, no question, but man, that's great news about the City of Somerville staff really understanding the full scope of the project. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's really, really positive. Any other questions or comments on this from folks? Okay.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
Mm.
About for a while, so looking forward to having a vote to move this forward, hopefully at the next meeting when we have full voting quorum. The other subcommittee update is from our mental health, resilience, trauma training for adult education and workforce development organizations subcommittee. So since our last meeting, the subcommittee met on myself, Colleen, and Silvana, met with William, and we basically talked about kind of what our questions would be, what we want to learn more about within this field or set of services. And then William helpfully reached out informally to a couple of different providers to just get a better sense of the landscape of trainings that are offered on this topic and a sense of implementation examples. So our subcommittee is going to regroup and absorb that information that William got back, and then hope to bring a more substantive update to the full board next time. William, do we have a subcommittee meeting date on the calendar?
So I'm hoping we can do a time next week, if that works for everyone on the subcommittee. I think it looks like next Tuesday or next Thursday were the times that are winning in the poll so far.
Yeah, I could at 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
Okay, I could do Tuesday or I think Thursday at 6. What about Silvana and Colleen?
Colleen, I think you
I could do
could
either. Yeah.
either, right?
Annika, I don't want to bother, but Tuesdays are a little bit tough due to other meetings and conflicts I have with some PD hours that I'm taking online. Can it be Thursdays, please? And I'll promise this time I'll be in time.
Yeah, sure. If Thursday works better for you, that sounds great for me. So
Yeah, guilty.
Thursday at 6.
Thursday at 6.
I'll hold
And
it
that
now.
works for me too, because that's
Awesome.
my late night. So
Perfect.
perfect.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that scheduling foray here, folks, and we will bring more updates to the board after we meet again.
Annika, sorry, can we go back to the Good Municipal Jobs Training Subcommittee for 1 sec? I just remembered something.
Sure. Let's go back.
So we had also said that we wanted to do like a bidders conference type thing. And William, do you want to like reach out to the subcommittee to get some ideas for planning that, or how do you want to sort of organize that? I mean, I'm volunteering myself to help with that since I know the integrated education and training programs pretty well and can provide some examples.
Yes. So my understanding is that typically falls just after the RFP is released. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it would be helpful, assuming the vote moves forward for that subcommittee to be reconvening to talk about the timeline for how long the RFP would be open, the date of the potential date of that subcommit, or sorry, that pre-bidder conference and what that might entail. Do you think it would be helpful to schedule that before the June meeting?
Not sure, not necessarily, but I didn't want it to drop because I know it's sort of a new concept for a lot of providers in Somerville, so I want to make sure that we definitely do that.
Yes, and I would say we can talk about this amongst the subcommittee, but it might be a good idea if we can record that as well for anyone who's not able to attend.
Absolutely.
And then I think typically just kind of have minutes or a report that's issued that explains what was discussed.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, Vicki. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about the mental health resilience and trauma training subcommittee? Okay, so then we were going to, on our agenda, we have obligation votes, but a quorum to vote to obligate funds needs to be a full quorum of the actual board number, the number of people on the board, not the number of people present. So since we are short one person, I think we will not be able to do this obligation vote tonight. And then as we have no cost extension votes on our agenda. with a bylaws question, since we're not obligating funds, they're already obligated. William, can we do this vote with the quorum we have?
Yeah, these would just be a simple majority. So the 5 members is sufficient for a no cost extension vote.
Thanks. Super. So then let's move our obligation votes agenda items to our next agenda. And then with the memo that William sent out, it explains the background around these no cost extension votes. So if folks want to read through that and then let us know if you have any questions. Anyone have any questions about this or comments?
I can share a comment. Just generally speaking, it's continuing to be a challenging time for providers, both on the enrollment end and on the job placement end. I think that timelines for retentions happening are definitely a challenge for providers. For a little bit of context, Justice Start's grant was a 15-month grant. However, their organizational goal for 75% job placement is actually 1 year after the conclusion of their training, which would be a 21-month grant or a year and 9 months. So I'm continuing to have conversations with the providers about realistic timelines. For some providers, it's more of a challenge of the enrollment, and for others, it's more on the job placement front. But just wanted to share that that's something I'm actively talking with multiple providers about.
It does seem like a pretty long period for connecting folks to employment after the training. I don't think I've ever seen a year-long employment placement period. Usually it's 6 months at the most. So that's interesting.
Yeah, if there was the extension to September 30th, that would be a full year beyond their graduation date last September.
Oh. Okay, so this is with the extensions, it will be a year, but we didn't set out at a year. Yep. Okay, gotcha.
William, I guess could you share a little bit, sort of high level, if there's trends that the providers are sharing that are related to the challenges in job placement? Or does it seem like our sample size is small enough that there's not really like a trend that they're sharing? It's more a mix of things.
I mean, I think with Justice Start in particular, it's a very small sample size, but I think I think it just relates in general to individuals having kind of longer runways from graduation to employment for a variety of reasons. As you can see, one individual is continuing their studies at Bunker Hill. One individual is volunteering. So I think there's, questions here about, what does short-term success look like to the participants? It might look a little bit different than, rapid or short-term employment gains. Beyond that, I can't point to anything in particular beyond those pieces. I think that in some instances with trainings, it's dependent on, is there a market for the job training that you're doing? And the vast majority of the programs we fund, I feel very confident about the availability of jobs for individuals to apply to.
With the individual who's continuing their studies at Bunker Hill Community College, I mean, one performance measure that I've seen commonly used is whether people get jobs or continue their studies into higher education or training programs. So I don't know if that's our measure. I haven't looked at them in a while, but if we had that measure, then this person could be counted as a program graduate because they're continuing their education at another institution. So
Yeah,
it might be something to think about.
yeah, that's a really good point, Vicki. That's actually, that's come up in some proposals from providers to us. For example, Franklin Cummings Tech, they wrote specifically in their proposal that is how they're currently measuring placement. They're measuring it as job placement or placement into continuing education. So I was able to adapt that into the scope of work that we drafted together. I'm hoping from that example, I can have similar conversations with other providers to see if just get an understanding of how they're measuring success and whether they're tracking continuing education. Of course, I want to be mindful of the fact that we want to still see job placements happening, but I think that's a good example of career advancement for some individuals.
Yeah, it's that came up especially in the career ladder movement. Some people just can continue up the career ladder educationally, and they want to make a couple of steps on the education ladder before they go into employment to make sure they get access to living wage jobs. I think that the most important thing to point out is you'll want to, even though it might be one measure and it'll, whether people do one or the other, it'll count as a success. You definitely want to track separately whether they went into employment or education, because we also don't want training providers to just start enrolling people in additional training programs and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's success.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one example I didn't speak about, or I didn't speak more about in the memo was, I believe, one individual who graduated and now their spouse is enrolled in the Just to Start training, and it's not necessarily the most opportune moment for them to switch jobs while their spouse is enrolled. So I think that's, again, that's a very specific example, but see, these are some of the choices that graduates are facing in, making sure they're embarking on something new at a time that makes the most sense for their household.
Thanks for sharing that context, William. I think we can move to our votes. I am going to make a motion to approve a no-cost extension for Just to Start through September 30th, 2023.
A second.
Second, all righty. All in favor of approving a no-cost extension for Justin Start through September 30th, 2023. And then I will read through. Okay. All righty, here we go. Thomas Bent, absent. Vicky,
Yes.
Silvana,
Yes.
McLaughlin, absent. Colleen,
Yes.
Rachel, absent. Annika, yes. Rand,
Yes.
okie dokie. Measure passes. Second vote, I make a motion to approve a no-cost extension for AACA through December 30th, 2023.
Second.
All right, second. Then we have a motion on the floor to approve a no-cost extension for AACA through December 30th, 2023. How do you vote? Tom, absent. Vicky,
Yes.
Silvana,
Yes.
Matt, absent. Colleen,
Yes.
Rachel Ned Carney, absent. Annika, yes. Rand,
Yes.
yes. All right, super. Measure passes. Thanks, William, for sending that news back to our training providers. And with that, I will also turn us over to agenda item number 8, a report back from William following meeting with the Boston Neighborhood Jobs Trust. So we're a full-fledged trust here. We've been in business for what, 4 years? 4 years? We should have like an anniversary cake or something. So, we are not the only jobs trust in town. Well, we're the only one in town, but we're not the only one around that exists. And so William kindly embarked on a fact-finding mission to learn more about the other really big jobs trust that we're familiar with in Boston, which is a little bit of a different structure and some different processes, just because we think it can be helpful to reflect on our processes and see if there's anything we can learn from how other folks are operating these types of funds. And so with that, I will turn it over to William to walk you through a chart that he had shared illustrating the differences and similarities between the Boston Neighborhood Jobs Trust and Somerville Job Creation and Retention Trust. William.
Great, thank you, Annika. So I looked at 6 comparison points here in making this chart between the Neighborhood Jobs Trust, NJT, and our JCRT. There's definitely some similarities and points of difference, and also I think there's probably some strengths. There's definitely some strengths to the differences in both of the models. The purpose of the 2 trusts, I think, is very similar. Ensuring that residents are directly benefiting from real estate development that's happening in their municipality. Board composition is a pretty significant difference. There's only 3 trustees on the NJT, and one of them is appointed by the mayor. One is the director of the Office of Workforce Development, and then another is City of Boston collector. So 2 of them are city staff. We have a much larger trust. As you know, the full trust is 9 members, including 3 ex officio members and 6 that are appointed by the mayor. So there's definitely a bit more detail in terms of the composition of the Somerville Trust. In terms of what funds should accomplish, and determining, whether funds should be used. In Boston, it's to address employment needs of lower income residents, serving lower skilled individuals with multiple barriers to employment. There's also the consideration in Boston of maintaining a balance between services targeted to specific neighborhoods impacted by development and services that are accessible to residents across the city, including those not currently impacted by large-scale development. So, of course, Boston is a larger geographical region than Somerville, so that makes sense to me. Considerations for our trusts includes determining whether the project will help ensure long-term employment and career building opportunities, whether there's a community need for the program or project, and whether there's organizational capacity within the community to facilitate. Of course, the trust assets are another consideration, as well as other sources of funds. We also have a emphasis on projects that benefit vulnerable and underserved populations. So that can be considered a point of similarity. In terms of uses, the NJT has two primary use categories. One is occupational skills training programs, and the second is supportive partnerships, which are partnerships between programs that provide the intensive case management and skill development alongside the job training and placement services. So they typically award larger amounts to programs that have these wraparound supports built in. As you can see from the chart, there's a lot more specificity into the types of things that the JCRT can fund, and includes development and creation of job training and similar programs, as well as outreach efforts to identify vulnerable populations facing barriers to employment. The trust can also purchase tools, including software, to help assess resident skills or match residents with available local jobs. Assist public agencies and nonprofit partners with purchasing equipment related to their job training programs. Trust money can also be used to research projects to determine appropriate uses of other trust funds. It can be used as seed money for new programs. It can support high school and career and technical education or CTE programs. Assist employers and partners to develop high-road business practices, such as worker-owned co-ops, provide professional development and training for nonprofit and education partners, funds for capacity building, and any other programs or projects which fulfill the purpose of the trust. So that was a mouthful, but that's really shows the breadth of uses for the funds that the JCRT obligates. Contracts for the NJT are, a standard contract is 12 months. They do have extensions on a case-by-case basis. I put that for the JCRT, the length does vary. They're generally in that 12 to 15 month range, but as we talked about, some of them do go a little bit longer, and we have granted no cost extensions. And then the last comparison point is the frequency of RFPs. The NJT generally has 1 and sometimes 2 RFPs per year. For example, in 2022, they released an RFP in October for programs to be starting in January of this year. Their RFPs are generally broad in scope, which explains how they're able to just have 1 or 2 rounds per year and fund many organizations. And then the comparison here is, I'm not sure, maybe it got cut off, but there's approximately 4 RFPs over the last year for the JCRT. And as we know, they're much more specific in scope in terms of the type of programming that the trust is looking to fund. So yeah, I think Annika explained kind of the lead up to this, just fact-finding exploration, but I'm happy to see if there's any questions or comments that the trust has about the chart or anything that they would like to learn more about in relation to the NJT and its administration.
Thanks, William. I've got a couple of questions that I'm not sure you'll have the answers right off the top of your head, but do you, on the trustees, the board composition, do you know who the mayor appointee is for the NJT?
I believe it's a member of the city council.
Okay. And do you know how much funding they have available, like right now, or average every year, or any sense of funding levels to make a comparison to what we've got?
That's a really good question. I can look into that. I was actually meaning to look for their most recent press release. I believe I can't remember if it was a 2021 RFP that they had awarded 2.1 million at a given time to about 20 to 30 organizations. But yeah, I can see if I can get more information on that, and maybe that's something I can incorporate into this as well.
Great. And that spoke a little bit to the next question of how many organizations do they fund with each of these RFPs? Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yes.
And I guess a major difference that I see is just sort of how the funding decisions and priorities are shaped. And a lot of that obviously has to do with the board composition and the uses. It does look like the NJT has sort of narrower uses, not only compared to what we can fund, but what we have funded. So that's a pretty significant difference as well.
Yeah, I think 2 questions I have related to what Vicky's saying is, one, I would be interested in your fact finding if what sort of public opinion processes the NJT uses to get a sense of both the field, like workforce development fields, Boston communities, residents, just like what the research process is for them. And then the second piece, oh yeah, under the funds under the uses, are both of these delineated in the ordinances or the bylaws? Like, is this bit with Boston about how it's occupational skills, supportive, and the professional, scientific, and technical services, the focus, is that all like written in their ordinance, or is that kind of what they've coalesced around through a strategic plan? But that's not maybe grounded in, or not, obviously it's grounded in the ordinance, but I would guess,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be interested in knowing.
So, I can confirm on that. I think so. The dollar amounts are not tied to anything in the ordinance. Those are just based on kind of what they shared were their average awards for those. And then I think the target sectors were the ones that have been mentioned in the most recent RFPs. One thing that they did note was that in response to one of their RFPs, I don't remember exactly which one, they actually did not get responses from providers of IT training, and that is what initiated them putting out the second RFP, because they saw that as a major hole in the availability of what, yeah, how people responded to the first RFP.
I find it so interesting that the board composition is so much smaller with such a, larger scope to serve.
Yeah, and it really underscores Somerville's commitment to public residents being involved, since there's no
Yes,
members
yeah.
of the public on the Boston one.
I think the Somerville is very thoughtful about who's included, employers and residents and experts in the field, and this is more like city driven, I think, from the Boston side.
Yeah, so that's, as I kind of think about like the whole purpose of the fund, it feels like the Boston NJT is sort of an extension of the city of Boston's workforce development funding.
Yes.
And then, yeah, and then in Somerville, it's like a publicly driven process that is not just controlled by city staff.
Yes.
So very different, and also
Yeah.
more like a philanthropic funder in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think zooming out from the comparison between the two trusts, I'm always interested in getting an understanding of what is helpful for the field to best support Somerville residents. And so, William, maybe for our next meeting, I'd be interested in hearing any feedback we've gotten over the years from the field about RFPs we put out in terms of like the timeline that we give folks or complexity or things like that. Because I think that, as funders, it is important for us to think about how we can make our processes as accessible and painless as we can, within understanding that there's laws and procurement processes and things that we, of course, have to follow.
Yeah, I was actually thinking when you were saying that, Annika, that maybe I can do some sort of survey related to that. I think sometimes it can be challenging for the providers to express shortcomings with the system that I'm endorsing or carrying out. So yeah, so I will work on putting together a survey that touches on the themes you talked about.
Thanks, William. And then, I guess I would say globally, sort of when we think about who we're talking to, there's the folks who have been funded, which I appreciate your sensitivity towards that power dynamic. And then there are the folks who didn't apply for funding. And so a bit of a harder group, because that could be a range of folks. But I think as we think about our processes, if you have heard things from the field, I know it was really insightful to hear that, for example, when we put out that childcare initiative, that was during a time when actually the field had a lot of money coming into it from other levels of government. So that's helpful for us to think of, but maybe that'll be useful later as the ARPA money isn't around. So I guess if there's just like other insights that you've heard from folks who weren't able to apply for bandwidth issues or didn't see a need to apply for other things, I think that's also helpful for us to think about the processes. And so if folks have any other comments or questions, research.
Sounds like there might be something coming from Colleen's area.
There's a lot of comments. I can't understand what they are, but there's a lot of commentary.
Good. Well, well let the record reflect. Okay, then I think I'm going to move ahead to our meeting format and trust member availability for in-person meetings. So some board members have expressed interest in intermittently returning to in-person meetings. I would just like to see everybody in person. I think we can, you know, with the weather and stuff in the winter, I think it's good for us to be mindful about that maybe remote is easier for folks. But it's been a long time since we've met in person as a board, and I think it would be really great to see each other. And so we thought a summer meeting with the lighter evenings and less chance of a snowstorm would be the good way to go. So we have 2 dates that I'm going to ask if folks can make for June. And then William, hopefully you could follow up with some of the folks who aren't here so we could get a good sense of when would work. So looking ahead to, June or July. Okay, so our next meetings are Wednesday, June 7th at 6, or Wednesday, July 5th at 6. And so I am interested for anybody who is confident they could make the Wednesday, June 7th at 6 p.m. meeting in person. Could you please raise your hands now? Okay. So everybody except me, I will be in Maine. My hand is down. William, could you capture that for the records, please? Thank you. Okay, Wednesday, July 5th at 6 p.m. Who is confident that you could make that time in person? Okay, yeah. No, everybody is a no. All right, noted. Noted.
Exact opposite schedules.
Yes.
Well, that's okay. You all can hang out without me, or we'll figure this out. Probably won't be our only in-person meeting.
We'll have to do September so we can see. We don't do August, right? But
Yeah, we know, well, I don't know. September is actually, I don't know if I can look ahead to September right this second, but I think we could touch base in the middle of the summer to look ahead to that too. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. William, thanks for touching base with the other board members, and we'll see if we can hit quorum on June 7th. If I were to be absent from it. So with that, are there any additional items not reasonably anticipated by the chair?
Annika, on the meeting format, I remember when we talked about in-person meetings a few months ago, several months ago, when Tom Galligani was still attending the meetings, he said something about the city wanting to make sure that we had the ability to do hybrid meetings, and there was some like technology issues that had to be sorted out. William, is that still an issue, or is it not an issue, or have we solved the technology problems? What's the status of all that?
So I would say I don't want to categorize it as an issue, but if the June date works for a quorum, I would definitely need to talk to my team to see whether so let me back up for a second. The city has a plan to transition to Zoom for meetings like this starting in the fall.
That's worth celebrating.
Probably in time for our September meeting. So I have received training materials on doing a hybrid meeting on Zoom. I have not received training materials on doing a hybrid meeting on GoToWebinar. So if if a quorum of the trust is interested and available to meet in June, I would think that that would probably just be an in-person only meeting, based on technology that I'm able to command at this time. It would also depend on room availability, so that would be the next thing that I would need to book. So I hope that answers your question. We're on our way to solving the technology, but I think if we had a meeting in 1 month, I don't think we're ready for hybrid at that point.
Okay, so it sounds like it's either in person or online until September when we can start doing hybrid. Okay, helpful.
Cool. Thanks, William.
I have to jump. If there's
Okay,
no
well,
more votes. See you later.
good.
Sorry.
Good to see you, Rand.
I approve a
We're
motion
about
to
to adjourn
adjourn.
anyway. Make a
Yeah,
motion.
yeah,
to
let's.
adjourn. All
Yeah,
right.
vote to adjourn.
All in favor? You did it.
We have any location for June 7, please?
So I'm gonna check with Rachel, Tom Bent, and Matt McLaughlin, and then if we have enough people for an in-person meeting, then yeah, I will get back to you about the location. As of right now, let's assume that it is virtual just because it's already scheduled that way with GoToWebinar. And if you don't hear about a different location, it will still be virtual, but I will be in touch if there's an update.
Thanks, William.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that count as an official adjournment? Good deal. All right, we've adjourned at
Awesome.
7:20. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good
Bye.
evening. Take care.
Thanks, Annika. Thanks, William.
Yeah.